Good afternoon and welcome back to Vironix's Expert and Thought Leader video series. I'm Sumant Swaminathan, co-founder and director of Vironix Health. And we have with us today our colleague and friend, Dr. Georgia Mitsi. Welcome, Georgia.
Nice to see you again, Sumant, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. For our viewers, Georgia is the executive director of the Frontier Business Office at Sumitomo Dynapon, which is focused on expanding further Sumitomo's pharmaceutical industry through innovative technologies that could transform patients' lives. Dr. Mitsi was named as a 2018 Pharma Voice 100 Inspirational Leader, recognized as a digital expert and transformational leader who's moving the industry forward using a variety of digital strategies and tools. She was also recognized by CentralWatch as a top 20 innovator. Dr. Mitsi is a hands-on digital innovator and mentor to startup digital health companies with expertise in developing scientifically validated software, health outcomes, and health economics research. She was formerly founder and chief executive officer of Aptomics, a digital health company which designed scientifically validated solutions for monitoring of chronic neurological conditions. Previously, she served in health economics and clinical research roles at United Biosource Corporation at Humana's Innovation Center, and held positions in sales and marketing in a variety of pharmaceutical companies. Dr. Mitsi is an active blogger on a variety of digital healthcare topics. She's a frequent speaker in conferences, has authored numerous scientific publications and 2 novels. Dr. Mitsi holds an MBA in International Business from the University of Miami School of Business Administration. She's a PhD in pharmacoepidemiology and a Master's of Science in Applied Medical Sciences, which she earned from the University of Patras. And of course, outside of all that expertise, Georgia is a friend, an innovator, and it's nice to be speaking with you today, Georgia.
Thank you so much, Sumant, for that introduction. One thing that I would like to add is I'm currently stepping down from my current role at Sumitomo Dynapon, so I don't want to create any confusion. I will be starting my new position in a week. So I thought that would be an important add to what you just mentioned.
I see. Well, transition and perhaps congratulations are in order for your new endeavors and maybe further discussion sooner
yes,
or later.
Thank you.
So, Georgia, we're now 1 year into the global pandemic. And of course, despite this tragedy, there have been opportunities for a variety of disruptive technologies to transform healthcare, particularly digital technologies. And we're wondering, have you found any approaches, particular technology efforts in the past year to be particularly novel or exciting?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sumant. And despite the fact that, pandemic has really disrupted everybody's life unfortunately, I'm going to use a term that has been used a lot in an unprecedented way. It created also an amazing opportunity for people to realize the value of digital technologies. And you and I, we had the opportunity to collaborate in the past. So for the past few years, we have been discussing and challenged a lot about how people can actually adopt these digital technologies. And finally, I like to say that it took a pandemic for people to realize their importance. In my opinion, the biggest change, it was in the adoption of telemedicine. But telemedicine, as you and I both know, it is not so innovative. It is a concept that made perfect sense logically, but it is also something for people who do not know that started more than 10 years ago. And because of regulatory and reimbursement challenges, the adoption was challenged. But now the pandemic came and people forced, in a way, to start using telemedicine so they can continue somehow receiving the care and the services that they needed. And despite the fact that there are still people who may be resisting on how telemedicine, where the pandemic ends, I believe this is where finally we saw the biggest difference. Because even in the past, when we were talking about digital technologies in general, people do not question the value of digital technologies, but what they question a lot, it was the engagement in specific cases by both patients and doctors. And in some other cases, it was also reimbursement challenges. So in my opinion, that was the biggest eye-open. Okay, almost we're all forced, and when we didn't have any other option, there was this great tool that will allow us to continue having our professional lives and talking about patients being able to connect their doctors and receiving the care that they needed, which was specifically important for people who suffer from chronic conditions. And in addition to that, the other pleasant surprise, it was how FDA actually embraced these changes, and it created an ecosystem of principles and regulations that actually allow the adoption, the further adoption of these digital solutions. And then the last thing that I wanted to highlight is I think that this whole pandemic also created an opportunity for people to start talking about the mental health crisis once again. The mental health crisis is not a new topic, but it became a lot more apparent right now because it was not only the people that they have been diagnosed, but I believe each one of us were dealing with mental health, some kind of mental health situation, either from anxiety to dealing with how lives have been changed, anxiety because of the unknown. Nobody knows exactly when we're going back to our lives. So this became an even more important problem. There were already lots of digital applications that patients could use, but now it became even more evident that patients will use them, and doctors are willing to actually leverage any kind of tools that they can help them better their patients' mental health status in general.
And Georgia, you mentioned sort of three critical pieces of the challenges to digital health technology that may have changed recently, right? One you pointed out was the payer reimbursement, which is becoming more open. Two, you pointed out essentially engagement, the belief that and now physicians have been connecting more with their patients more easily. And then you mentioned the regulatory environment that's opened up, right? Now, if we were to focus some on the automated types of technologies, right, the AI space, some of these technologies that are not necessarily meant to support the traditional physician-patient interaction. Right? Can you talk a little about what pharma is doing in that space? Why they're interested in those sorts of technologies. A little bit about precision medicine. And why they're interested in such technologies. And partially the reason we're interested in that, of course, is because as Vironix, of course, is in that space.
Yes.
Talk about pharma's interest in those technologies.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right in the summary that you gave about the regulatory and reimbursement challenges and the engagement, because these were the main issues that we have been struggling, all of us, that we have been working in the digital health space. When we go into pharma and their decision to become more active in looking and investing in technologies like Vironix, which has an AI component. I think that you mentioned a very interesting term. You said the traditional physician and patient interaction. And I would like to just ask the question here. With everything that we have experienced the past several months, I think that everybody understands that there is nothing traditional anymore. Although nobody exactly can predict how things will work in the future, I think that we have all been challenged to think of new ways of what that new physician and patient interaction would look like, and how pharma should be taking that in while they are trying to explore new business models and try to remain competitive in their market space. And I believe this is one of the main reasons why pharma is getting interested in that space.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about, it's part of their effort to explore what really matters to bringing a superior value for stakeholders. And when I say stakeholders, I would like to include both patients and doctors as well. And pharma is always trying to find ways to help patients, but they also have realized that the traditional way of serving patients, just by giving them a pill, that's most probably not the most effective way to do it. So they really need to be smart in the ways that they are supporting both the patient and the provider. So solutions that include an AI component could improve, for example, the provider's workflow. They are overwhelmed and they need new tools to help them provide a better value of care for their patients. So maybe pharma could have a play there. It's not about, so the traditional interaction with providers will change as well. When pharma approaches doctors in the future, it's not about, okay, please prescribe my drug and the pills that we have and this is the scientific data. It's all about, let me show you how our product, and by saying product, I mean whatever might be the optimal solution for a very specific condition that they're going after. So in the area that I am mostly, working, and I'm very passionate, and I will go back to the mental health problems, it's not only about providing a pill, even if that pill has an amazing product profile, but because you really need almost a holistic management of patient symptoms, and that cannot be addressed only by prescribing the pill. Sometimes you need to prescribe therapy as well, and why therapy cannot be part of the actual product that you're giving. A pill with a therapy, a patient goes in one packet with the pill and the QR code, and all the data goes back to the doctor, and the doctor really understands how to better manage the patient. If he or she needs to adjust the medication, if he needs to give more medication. So I believe that's the reason why. It's all about thinking how to better create this best experience for the patient and for the doctor. And if they find tools, technological enabled tools that can solve that problem, that would be a great breakthrough for pharma companies, for doctors, and mostly for patients.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Georgia, finally, and on a slightly separate topic, I mean, you've been a huge advocate for women in the life science industry and in holding executive positions. And as we begin to sort of re-envision healthcare in America, particularly this value-based healthcare landscape that you just so eloquently described, I'm curious if you have encountered any industry practices or changes that have substantially increased the diversity and inclusion of women in the workforce.
So Sumant, you understand that us talking in the aftermath of everything that is happening in our country right now, this question has some political implications where I would like to stay out of it. However, I would like to say that I have been a huge supporter of women in science and women in actually being part of the decision-making process. And not for any other reason, because I believe that there is a lot of capable women out there that most probably they have not been given the right opportunities. If I have encountered any particular practices, I believe that all of us, we have encountered a wave of many courses on diversity and women empowerment the past several months, which is an encouraging sign. However, I question heavily this particular approach. And what I mean by that is that the courses, yes, that are encouraging because some education might be needed, that not everybody has the same information. However, being inclusive and being fair, it has to be part of the company's culture. It is your DNA. It's just like, when we're teaching our kids to be kind to one another. You do not actually, this is not something that kids will learn in courses, although they can receive some training. However, you instill these values by actually leading by example. So you show them how to be kind. You show them what love means. It's pretty much the same thing. You need to show to your employees what diversity and equality means. And what I mean by that is people who have been fortunate enough to find themselves in positions of power, they have, in a very practical way, show that they're giving opportunities to women and people of color, and they are giving them the tools and the mentoring to become successful. It's not just the talk that we are working on it just to check the box. And that's all I have to say about this.
I mean, it's a very interesting response you just gave. I would like to talk about this more. I'm going to ask you just one more question on that subject.
Okay.
Because it sounds like maybe you're suggesting that systemic change in some of these companies that really have had a long time culture of either poor diversity or lack of inclusion maybe aren't making as much progress as they could be, if partly because of the endemic culture, right? And maybe some of the most progress is being made in newer entities, that have a clean slate where they can sort of get the culture right up front. I mean, do you think that's true, or do you think that I'm oversimplifying?
It's a complicated matter overall. What I'm trying to say is that you do not wake up one day and you tell people to act in a specific way just because you put a course and a mandatory course that they have to attend. People are not going to do what they've been told unless they be that, unless they see actions internally that support that the company is going towards a specific direction. Processes are very important, but processes are more like guidelines or roadmaps. And people are a lot more willing to follow a process, first of all, if they're part of it, and that there is truth behind it. And you cannot actually fool people. You have to be authentic, and people can read through, empty statements. I'm saying that to you because I have been living in the world for many, many years. You don't create innovation by just putting in a corporate deck or by just hosting a couple of innovative events per year. You are being innovative by actually taking risks and working with startup companies and investing in startup companies and including technologies in your clinical trials to show that you understand the value and you also understand the risk that this is a new area and yes, nothing will go smoothly. The same is with diversity. You need to include, and that's what I'm saying. Okay, now we are talking about it, but numbers do not lie. So, and it's very easy to find the data of every company and see, for example, how many actually they have in executive positions.
Well, Georgia, I mean, I think your career, your personal life, I think it's something to aspire to for a lot of people. And I'm saying gender neutral I think you've done remarkable things. And obviously, I know your career. We've been friends for a while, and so it really was a pleasure talking to you. Um, and you know, we would like to talk to you again. We hope that you come back. Um,
I am super happy to be part of this interviews month. I feel honored for being included, and I would love to come back because I have some very interesting things that I will be working in the future. And the way that technology works is complementary. That's how I see it, because we are all targeting the same problem. How can we make patients' lives better? The Vironix is focusing on a specific angle and perspective, and I'm going to be focusing on something else. But there's definitely lots of things that we can learn from each other, and a lot of ways to support each other in our good fight.